Today on Dispatch 104, the Manassas Railway Festival, a new locomotive on my layout, your layout photos, and announcements. All of that coming right up. You are watching Dispatch, the variety show for model railroaders. I'm Roy Smith, your host. Some of you have asked about my layout updates. It's been a while, I know, but I have two good excuses. One, I've been busy watching your videos. And two, I'm the world's slowest model railroader. Seriously, I will try to put together a layout update as soon as I can. Okay, first up on the show, the Manassas Railway Festival. In a series of recent videos, I told you about the model railroads I visited during my trip to Virginia and Pennsylvania in May and June. These model railroaders included Jim Young's layout, Todd Treaster's layout, and the Reading and Susquehanna Club layout. Now, along with those layout visits, I did one more thing during my trip. I went to the Manassas Railway Festival on June 3rd. I want to tell you about it because someday you may want to go to it too. On that day, June 3rd, Leonore and I met up with my daughter Emily and my son Michael and his wife Lisa. All five of us then went to the 29th Manassas Railway Festival in historic downtown Manassas. The festival is an annual event held on the first Saturday in June every year to commemorate the city's railroad history. It features an excursion train ride and model train displays. This is the second time I've gone to this event. It was a hot day and the event was crowded with thousands of people, but I had tons of fun. In case you don't already know, Manassas is located in northern Virginia, 30 miles or so west-southwest of Washington, D.C. Let me point out that historically there might not be a Manassas if it wasn't for the railroad. And without the railroad, there probably wouldn't be a Manassas Railway Festival to go to. You see, back in the 1850s, railroad tracks ran from the railroad junction at Manassas west to Virginia's Shenandoah Valley and south to Richmond, the state capital. The railroad junction served in the transport of troops and war materials, and that explains why two Civil War battles were fought in the Manassas area, one in 1861 and a second one in 1862. The Manassas National Battlefield Park, where the two battles occurred, is located just 5 miles or so north of historic downtown Manassas. Over the years, I have visited the battlefield a number of times. Today, the railroad tracks through Manassas are owned by the Norfolk Southern, but Amtrak also uses the tracks. 3 Amtrak routes pass through Manassas. They include the Crescent, which runs between New York and New Orleans, the Cardinal between New York and Chicago, and the Northeast Regional between Boston and either Norfolk or Roanoke, Virginia. And lastly, the Virginia Railway Express, or VRE, also uses the tracks through Manassas. The VRE is a commuter rail service that runs between Washington, D.C. and the northern Virginia suburbs from Monday through Friday. So here we are, departing Manassas on the VRE's hour-long round-trip scenic excursion ride to Clifton and back. That's Mike and Lisa, then Leonore, and then Emily. I'm sure that all of them are looking at this video right now just as you are. Of course, I'm behind the camera taking the picture. Okay, here I am in the picture this time, along with Leonore. Now here's the best advice I can give you on this or any other video. If you're traveling, go by train. It's the civilized way to travel. After the excursion train ride, we walked over to the outdoor pavilion to see the modular layouts set up there by local model train groups. There were a bunch of such layouts, including an O-gauge layout, several HO scale layouts, a garden railway layout, and even a Lego layout. But as an N-scaler, I was most attracted to an N-scale modular layout set up and operated by the Northern Virginia N-Track Club. Mike and Lisa really seemed to enjoy it too. In the past, when Mike lived in an apartment, I used to tell him to throw out his furniture and turn his living room into a train room. But now that he lives in a house with a massive 2-car garage, I tell him to get rid of his vehicles and turn his garage into a train room. Ha! A great big thanks to Emily for taking this photo. Unfortunately, I didn't get a photo of her at the pavilion, but I did get a photo of her on the excursion train. Well, let me just say that if you like trains and model trains as much as I do, then you might want to go to the Manassas Railway Festival if you get a chance. Now, next up on Dispatch, a new locomotive on my layout. My friend Jim Young in Pennsylvania sent me a really neat gift in the mail soon after I got back to Panama from my trip to Pennsylvania and Virginia. This Kato SD70M number 4015. You may recall that I visited Jim in May during my trip. He's a wonderful model railroad friend. Now, what's the backstory on the real 4015? Well, the Union Pacific Railroad picked number 4015 from its fleet of 1,400 SD70Ms when it needed to assign a helper unit to its excursion trains headed up by Big Boy 4014. Imagine 4014 and 4015 running together on my layout. That seems appropriate. Jim said he expects me to get Big Boy 4014 from my layout someday, and for that reason, he said I should have 4015 to run with the Big Boy. Well, I'm waiting for Kato to release its Big Boy DCC version with sound, which I believe is currently scheduled for this coming December. The UP made some cosmetic changes to 4015 to run it on excursion trains, including a green hood and silver trucks. You might be able to see these changes on my 4015. By the way, I found a really good video explaining why a diesel locomotive always runs in consist with the Big Boy. I will put a link to that video in the description down below. Jim included a Digitrax decoder for the locomotive in the package. I would have to install this decoder before I could run 4015 on my layout. But I knew that installing the decoder in 4015 would be easy to do. That's because years ago, I installed decoders in my other 4 SD70Ms, which you see sitting here on my locomotive storage shelves. Before installing the DCC decoder, I first ran the locomotive in DC mode on my test track, using my Kato power pack to make sure that it ran okay out of the box. Then I removed the shell from the frame. I took the instructions and the DCC decoder out of the package. Carefully following the instructions, I removed the factory light board that came with the locomotive. I applied Kapton tape to the frame to insulate it electrically from the decoder. I guess I got carried away and applied a bit of the tape in places where it wasn't needed, so I later removed some of it off camera. I installed the decoder, and while doing that, I made sure that the motor clips were placed underneath the decoder tabs on both sides of the frame. I knew that the locomotive wouldn't run if I didn't do this. I reinstalled the shell. I programmed the 4-digit road number. Then I ran it on my layout. It is smooth, quiet, and responsive, just like Kato locomotives normally are. I love it, and eventually I hope to run it in consist with a Big Boy. And now your layout photos. Photos of other people's layouts inspire you and give you ideas for your layout. Here's how it works. You all post your photos of your layouts in our Facebook group. Then I bring your photos over here to Dispatch to share with everyone during the show. Let's go take a look at the photos you recently posted. Now, after dispatch ends, I'd like you to go over to the Facebook group and post a photo of your layout there, because we'd like to see it. I will put a link to the group down below. You will know you have arrived at the Facebook group when you see this photo at Echo Canyon on my layout. And now, as promised, some announcements. I have 3 of them. First, N-Scale Weekend. N-Scale Weekend will be held again this year at the Blair County Convention Center in Altoona, Pennsylvania on September 16th and 17th. This is an annual event sponsored by the Altoona Association of Model Railroaders. I went to the event last year and really enjoyed it. I met tons of friends in the hobby, and besides N-Scale Weekend itself, there are many other train and model train activities in Altoona. Horseshoe Curve is just one of them. Next, the NMRA Mid-Eastern Region Convention, which will also be held in Altoona, Pennsylvania from October 19th to 22nd at the Altoona Grand Hotel. This convention will be hosted by the Susquehanna Division 11 of the NMRA. It will include clinics, contests, layout tours, operating sessions, excursions, and other activities. And finally, the 30th National N-Scale Convention. This event will be hosted by the N-Scale enthusiast and will be held in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania next year, 2024, during June 18th to 23rd at the Wind Creek Hotel Resort in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Some of you may have gone to this year's N-Scale National Convention in Reno, Nevada. Registration for the convention in Bethlehem will begin in January 2024. I'm planning to go, and perhaps I will see you there. There's a number of important links for this edition of Dispatch down below in the description to this video. Be sure to check out the links after dispatch ends. I hope you enjoyed this edition featuring the Manassas Railway Festival, a new locomotive on my layout, and your layout photos. I encourage you to subscribe if you haven't done it yet, so that you don't miss any upcoming shows. Now, I invite you to go to this playlist over here. In it, I tell you about my trip activities in greater detail. You may want to do some of the same things yourself. Well, as always, I'm Roy Smith. Until next time, happy railroading.